When you were a kid at school, you had your shrapnel collection confiscated.
Mm.
What was the naughtiest thing you ever did at school, and what lessons did you learn from it for later life?
I wasn't very naughty at school, actually. Everyone kind of assumes that because I'm a prankster, that I was the kind of naughty kid at school. But actually I wasn't at all. I was a bit of a confused goth. And so I used to get in trouble for wearing sort of eyeliner and having slightly back-combed hair and stuff. The only thing I learnt at school was that I spent 10 years unlearning everything I learned for 10 years at school. Because I went to a sort of English boarding school and prep school and public school. And I just couldn't stand the place. I mean, you were educated well, but everything it stood for was completely pointless.
So you didn't get on with your teachers then?
Well, teachers are all right, although you've got to be suspicious about anyone who teaches at a prep school, a boarding prep school for boys. You know, like if you're going to be a teacher, you think, is that really going to be your first choice unless you have an interest in sort of small bottoms? So, no, it was a bit weird.
You had a very infamous schoolmate, or one schoolmate who became very infamous. What observations did you have of him at the time?
Well, I didn't. This was just totally weird. I went back to do a programme for Sky, and I went back to Lebanon, and I hadn't been back for about 10 years. And one of the things I did was I went back to my old school, which is called Brumana High School, which is in the hills above Beirut, and it's an English Quaker school, but kind of done on the lines of an American high school. So people go there from 6 to 18. And I was filming there, and the headmistress had no idea who I was, but she was told, oh, you know, he's a guy on the telly in England, and he's come back. And she came up and said, you know, you're not the most famous old boy. And I'm like, I was a bit bitter. I was like, really? Who? And she said, Osama bin Laden. I'm like, you've got to be joking. Like, I mean, not only Osama bin Laden, but a Quaker school, like that hasn't come out. But anyway, it turned out he did go there. He was there, I think he was 18 in his last year when I was tiny, like 6 in my first year. So obviously, I don't remember him. He wasn't wandering around with a beard looking at tall buildings going, this must go, you know, but I was desperately looking for a school photograph. You know, just one big school photograph with him in the middle, sort of going like this, you know. Yeah. But there's nothing. Looked him up on Friends Reunited, nothing. I don't know what happened with him.
Photos of him playing Jenga, maybe.
Yeah. Well, actually, even weirder, there was even a rumour that Uday Hussain, because before I went to the Brumana High School, I went to the French lycée in Beirut, and loads of, basically all kind of rich Arabs tended to send their kids to Lebanon for education. A, because the education was good. B, because it was kind of westernised, but still they were in the Middle East. And there was a rumour that Uday Hussain went to the French lycée in Beirut, so I really went to the school for scoundrels.
And you're in a band called Hang David.
God, yeah.
What MPs would form the best pop band, and what would you call it?
What MPs?
Yeah.
God, well, Una King, I know she's not an MP anymore, but I really fancied her. And I think she'd be a good lead singer. To have Galloway on bass, because he's the kind of slow, not quiet, but kind of bass player that just goes for everyone. Who do I have on guitar? Well, I hate him, but Lembit Opik would be on guitar because he really fancies himself as a bit of a sort of out. He's just one of those nerds that thinks he's cool, and it's just something extraordinary. So I'd like to watch him. He'd probably have his guitar really tight under the chin and his tongue out and just go, and he's such a nerd. And then drums, I don't know, you'd need someone big, wouldn't you? I'd probably have Nicholas Soames on drums, I think. So you'd have a bit of a cross-party thing. And I don't know, I don't know what I'd call them. I have to think about it. The winging it. I don't know what I call it. The bastards.
You later became more actively involved in politics, in a way, with the Teddy Bear Alliance.
Yeah, right.
What was the purpose of the campaign?
Well, the main purpose of my election campaign, if I'm really honest, was to meet Alan Clark, because I was just a total fan of Alan Clark, read all his books, his diaries, and he was standing in Kensington, Chelsea, where I was living. So I thought, great, well, I'll stand against him and we'll have a bit of a laugh anyway. So we set up this idea of running, which isn't that original, you know, running for Parliament. Every idiot dresses as a fish, or the Looney Party. But we did the Teddy Bear Alliance. I hired in every teddy bear costume in the country, about 900 of them, and just got all these weird people to wear them and wander around. And we had terrible slogans like say no to fleas and single European honey and just rubbish. I mean, it was complete nonsense. But we did run against Alan Clark. We came 4th, I think, and we beat the UK Independence Party, which was good. And we met Alan Clark, and he was just great. He loved the whole thing. He was a very nice man. I miss him. One of the few mavericks in politics, which I like.
And what's the worst experience you've ever had with a politician?
The worst experience I ever had was actually the very first time I met a politician. It was when I worked at ITN, right at the beginning. I had to come in on a Sunday morning, because no one else wanted to do it, to let Ann Widdecombe into a studio so that she was doing a down-the-line interview because she couldn't be bothered to go to wherever the studio was. And she just sat in there, and she was the rudest woman I've ever met in my life. I was like a 24-year-old researcher You know, didn't know what I was doing, came in, there was no one else there, I had to let her in the building and everything. Didn't say thank you, mumbled around, demanded a whole lot of stuff, then waffled on with her completely out of date, ridiculous views about life, and then waffled out again. I just thought she was the most unpleasant woman ever. But every time I see her on telly now, she seems to mellow, seems to be quite funny and occasionally makes sense, but I can't get out of my head what a wanker she was the first time I met her. So I suppose it just reminds you that you've got to be pretty careful, because whenever you meet someone, they'll always remember you for that one time, even if you're in a very bad mood.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe she'd just lost her virginity that day finally or something, I don't know, but probably not.
You stitched up Ken Livingstone quite nicely.
Yeah, I did.
Do you think Boris would do a better job than Ken? Where do you stand on the...
Well, I'm very weird with that, because I hate Ken Livingstone, but I have to say, of all the people we stitched up in Trigger Happy, he was the only person who behaved vaguely normally, because I'm interviewing him and a gorilla comes behind and starts waving a sign, so I punch the gorilla out, and all the other people I'd done that sort of thing to just kind of carry on normally, whereas at least Ken Livingstone said, you're a thug and should be arrested, which was a fair point. Having said that, I think he's an absolute moron. I think he's on an ego trip. I think politically he's completely dodgy, and I think he's crap for London, I really do. Boris Johnson, I did actually do for Trigger Happy, but he was one of the few people who actually spotted that we were doing a joke. I did it about the same time as Livingstone, when he was editor of The Spectator. And again, the joke was, as I was interviewing him, there was someone, a traffic warden, who was one of our guys, giving my car a ticket. So I go up and start beating up the traffic warden. And Johnson suddenly goes, hang on, I've seen this bloke before, it's Ali G, like that. So he didn't quite get it right, but at least we couldn't show it. I love Boris Johnson. I think he'll probably he won't destroy London. I don't think he'll do a worse job than Ken Livingstone, but he's bloody entertaining, he's very bright, he's funny, and Livingstone's none of those three, so...